Welcome back to the Noble Forms tutorial series. In the last video, we imported asset information and information about important people and entities from the John and Jane Jones estate planning file into a new trust administration file for Jane, who is the hypothetical decedent. And you're looking at where we left off on the last video. I had to go back and update the assets by going into each one of them. For example, the real property, the field for asset owner at death was blank. So I had to say this was decedent's trust. Also, the category, asset category was blank. So I selected trust asset. That's because my information so far from the spreadsheet that was done in the estate planning is that that asset did get into the trust and it would be a trust asset. And I assigned 50% of the ownership to Jane, the decedent. And I went through all the assets and did the same thing. Now, I'm not sure if these assets are accurate or not. It may very well be, since we imported them, that some of them that got imported might have been sold or given away or between the time of the estate planning and the date of Jane's death. I don't know that. I'm going to have to consult with her husband to kind of verify if these are accurate, which are and which aren't. The values, of course, are probably way off the mark. They're just the ones that were put in during the estate planning. That could have been 5 years ago. So all of that has to be updated. And the way it has to be updated is there has to be a document in the file from whomever is responsible for that asset to value it. In this case, it'd probably be an appraiser. And then we'd put in the value of the appraisal there. And we would determine if it really was owned by the trust. We'd get a trio to find that out, etc., all the way through these different assets. Now, the people up here, I went back and also there was some warnings on that because it didn't bring in the role. These people all had a role in the estate planning, but in the trust administration and probate, the roles are different. And so just for example, we looked at for most of the entities like Vanguard, the role is probably going to be like determiner of title, ownership to an asset, such as a financial institution. For people, it just would depend. In this case, for instance, John Jones, John has a lot of roles because he's the main player in this. He's a client. He's the petitioner, if we're going to do a probate. He's nominated in the pour-over will to be the personal representative. He could be a candidate for personal representative if there were other people vying for it. He is the settler of a trust. He's the trustee. He's a beneficiary of a trust. He's an heir, but he's not a devisee because under the will, the trust is the devisee under the pour-over will. And he is an heir, but he doesn't inherit. So he's entitled to notice if there were a probate, but he doesn't get anything because he's not, because there is a devisee. So I went through and did that for all of these, for all of the different people. Now, so now what do we want to do? Well, we want to try and refine this list. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a client interview template. And we're going to, when you do that, it creates a link. So I could copy the link and put it into an email and email it to John. And in my email, I could ask him to do certain things, like, take a look at all the assets and let me know which ones they don't own anymore. Or go in and add some assets that, they didn't have when we did the estate plan. And let me know if these roles that I've assigned to people are correct, or also on the assets with the asset type, if it really is correct. I've assumed things are in the trust. Maybe they never got put in the trust. And if not, then maybe they're going to be a probate asset. And so we'd have to make sure all the roles are complete. Now, when we go through that process, he could fill out the form, send it back to me. I could then share it with him in a Teams interview, share my screen with him and go over it again. And I could make notes on whether or not he's supplied me with documents. I'll show you all how that works once we get the asset the data desk spreadsheet setup. So, okay, how are we going to do the client interview? Well, let's go back to the home screen, and we'll just click Finish Later. That takes us back to the home screen, and we only have one app here in this estate, just a trust. Now, I don't know, maybe we're going to have to add a probate app later if we find out there's probate assets. But for the client interview app, you move the mouse over to Select App, and then you see the drop-down which apps are available. Well, I see client interview, but I know from the estate planning that that's the client interview for the estate planning that we set up way back when we did the estate plan for John and Jane. I actually, what I'm looking for is the client interview for probate. And even though it says probate, it really applies to trust administration as well. So let me click that and let's just see what happens. That's going to add another app here. Let's take a look. Okay, once you do that, the app opens, and you can see right up here at the top, you're directed to type in the email of the external user who's going to be filling out the form. That would be John. Now, just to illustrate this, because John doesn't have a real email, I'm going to type my email in here. And then we'll use the link that's created to send an email to me. I'll show you what it looks like. Now, so to create the link that you're going to copy and paste into the email, you have to type somebody's email address here. Okay, so I typed in my email address, and you can see it basically is just the information that was in the trust administration app before, except there's some new stuff down here. So this is going to be, is there a will or is the estate intestate? Well, there's a will, there's a pour-over will. Now, you see here it says include notes in the produced document. There's a place in these assets where you can make notes. I'm going to check this yes for now. So we'll produce it. Now, if you wanted to send a clean version, you'd just uncheck this, and it wouldn't have the notes that you're going to make in it. So let's check yes. Now, you notice down here at the bottom, there's a place where you can drag and drop your files. Well, so in other words, if John is going to upload, say, a bank statement to support a date-of-death value, he can upload it, he can drag it from his computer into this spot, and then you'll see it immediately. You can go, log on, look at the client homepage, and you can see the app. You can download it to your computer. So it's pretty incredible. So let's go ahead and create the document at this point. Now, you see, now you had the trust administration app. Now there's a client interview probate app. This is the document that was produced in Word. Now you could save this, open it up and take a look at it, but look what's happened up here. So it said you must have entered the client's email and clicked the create docs at least once. So we created this doc, we clicked the create docs, and that created this doc. And because of that, now there's an interview link. So if I hover over it and do a right mouse click and do copy link, I can use that to insert into an email. So let's, we're going to go do that right now. Okay, I've composed a draft email to John, and I'm going to go ahead and insert the link here. I'm going to click in here, do control, right mouse control, and do paste, and there's the hyperlink. Now, so in this email, I'm just saying the following is the link to open the client interview form, which I'm using to determine the assets that Jane owned when she passed away. The information on people and the information on assets came from the information that was used in your estate planning a couple of years ago. There's probably a lot of things that have changed. What I'd like to have you do is to go over the assets and then confirm that they are trust assets or assets that Jane owned personally outside of the trust. Please delete any assets that were not owned at death. Please add any assets that are not on the list, but in fact were owned at death. Finally, take a look at the dollar value and make any corrections that are needed. What I want you to do is to contact each of the financial institutions and have them send you a written statement that gives the value of the account on the day of death. The real estate will have to be appraised, and I will help you locate a real estate appraiser. The personal property will also have to be appraised, and I will help you locate a personal property appraiser. Let me know if you have any questions. I have you on the calendar for 2 weeks from today at 10 a.m. for a Teams conference. I will share my screen with you, and I will have the form running, and we can discuss the assets in more detail, and you can let me know how you are doing on getting written data death value documents for each asset. Best regards. Okay, so I'll go ahead and send that. Let's pretend that now we're in John's inbox, and here is the email that John received, and here's the link. Let's go ahead and click the link and see what happens. Well, look where we are. Right back to the same page with all the assets, and of course here's the place where he would drag and drop. Let's pretend that he does that he already has a bank statement. I'm just going to drag something in here. This really isn't a bank statement, but it's a fake bank statement, a PDF. And let's just kind of, now I want to go, I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go make some changes to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in a minute, and I'll have made some changes, and I'll tell you what I've done. Now we're back in my computer, and I've opened up the file for Jane Alice Jones, and now I see there's something new. There's this fake bank statement. Let's see what happens if I double click on it. Well, once I open it, here is the bank statement. We're going to pretend it's a real bank statement from Chase that would have the value. You could look at the statement and calculate what was the balance in Chase checking that ends in 6554, the day of the decedent's death. So we're going to save this. So I'd go just normally, like I normally would, file, save as, and I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it where I'm saving information about the assets. So this is kind of how I organize these files. And I have one folder that's just asset information. This actually is for John and Jane, and it kind of traces their whole history from estate planning through the death of the first spouse, the death of the second spouse. And so here under asset information, there's a folder for John, which has got nothing in it, and a folder for Jane. And I'm starting to build the place where I'm going to keep the information about the assets. And since this is a trust asset, I'm going to put it in here. And I've just gone in and made a folder for this particular account. And so I'm going to click on it. And here's the date of death. I fold a folder for just the document that I believe would be the date of death document for the CPA to do the Oregon 706. And that's where I'm going to save this one. I'd probably give it, today's date. And save it. And now that means that I actually have a document in the file that would support a dollar value of date of death for this particular asset. Now, if I go back to my home page here, and I have the for the trust administration, I'm going to open this up, open it up again. And I'm going to go back to the data death spreadsheet that I've got. So if I've got under the documents, I'm looking at data death spreadsheet. So here's where I'm going to go down to the assets, and I'm going to go back to that particular Chase account, which was, I think it was this one here, 6545, if my memory is correct. And I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to go down. I've got some information here. So here's where I keep notes about this. So in this case, who's responsible for the data death status information? And that's John, the client. And I'm going to make a note here for today. Of the fact that John has provided me provided the statement that covers the date of death. And the date of death document is in the file because I've saved it in my file. Now I know that I've handled that asset. Now over on the other side here, there's status information about the liquidation because this account is going to be liquidated and the proceeds are going to go into a newly established trust checking account with the new tax ID number for the irrevocable trust. And I'm going to go over here, and this is the client's responsible for that. And this is going to be liquidated. And here's where I would make a note about liquidation. So when I learn that John has gone to Chase and liquidated that account and deposited the proceeds, and make a note there. This is important to know for the value, and at this point for the value of the asset at the liquidation date. And we'll talk about that later in Exhibit 1. Right now we're just doing date of death. So now I've got that handled. And I would just work through all these assets with John, maybe through team meetings, or maybe he comes to the office, he brings documents in, I make note of the documents, and when we have a date of death document for each of the assets, then I send all this material to the CPA to prepare an Oregon 706, and they have all the documentation that they need in order to prepare the return. Now let's go ahead and prepare the date of death spreadsheet. So I would prepare the date of death spreadsheet and I would send it to the CPA along with probably using Dropbox or some other way to send the whole file with all of the documents that would establish the date of death value that we've collected. If you just scroll down, so if you want to do if you want to do the date of death spreadsheet, you have to pick it. So here it's selected under Documents. And then if you scroll down here, you see go through where you go down to, and I didn't actually put this in here, so I don't know, I forget what day we decided to, what was the date of death for this hypothetical, but you would put in, you'd calculate for Oregon, you'd have 12 months, and for federal, 9 months from date of death, put that in. And so this is going to show up in the date of death document that's produced. You're going to see when we produce it, it's going to show that we didn't enter it. But the other thing to take note of is that this document that's being produced, you can produce a version that has all your notes in it. I'm going to do that first. And then I'm going to show you how if you click include notes, it's going to produce the notes pertaining to each asset, whether you have a document or not, or don't have a date of death document in the file, and the liquidation status of the asset. And so you would just, we'll go ahead and produce it then. So we're going to do create docs. And then it's produced down here under its date of death values for all assets. So if you click on this, you can save it. And I'm going to save it here. In the asset information. So this asset information for Jane, and here it is, date of death values for all assets owned. I've already saved it once. I'm going to just say again, and it says, do you want to replace it? I'll say yes, because this is the current. You can just keep replacing it with a more current version as you get more exact data in the system. And if I want to see it right now, I can go up here to the downloads and open it from the download. So let's take a look at it and see what it looks like. It's opening up in Word down here. So here it is in Word. And see, it didn't have if I'd put in the date for the estate tax, it would have put it in right here. It shows the revision date. So every time you do it again, it runs a current date for the revision so you can see where you're at. And see, so it talks about Oregon probate assets. There are no probate assets. I'm going to run this again with another hypothetical and put some probate assets in here, because I think what we're going to want to do here is illustrate later in another video how you deal with a probate matter with a trust administration, because you can use an alternative full probate is to use a small estate affidavit. Now there was a change in the law last year that lets you do that. But right now we don't have any probate assets. All the assets were either passing by beneficiary designation or they were trust assets. They're just a couple passing by beneficiary designation, the insurance policies and her retirement account. And see, it's got it down. The value at death is the full value of like the retirement. Now you see it's got the data. You see the notes here, date of death status, document not in the file. Now, if I had checked that it was in the file, it would show us in the file. So you can kind of use this as a review. You can review, go through like noble forms and go through each asset and see if you have it. But you can also print a document out and take a look and quickly run through all the assets this way and just see what the data status is for the document in the file. So we only have one data document. That was a Chase account. So if you go down to, you see, and here I want to point out something else too. You see you've got the value at death is a 500,000, but she's only got half. Her value is only half of it because she only owns half of it. So if we go down to the bank accounts and we look at that Chase, which is this one right here, 6554. Oh, maybe it wasn't that one. Let's see. What Chase was it? Oh, it's this one right here. Yeah, the date of death status on the documented file. Here's the note I made about it. So that you would know that you do have the date of death value for that particular account has been established. So now what we're going to do is go back and run it again, and this time we're going to not have the notes, just to see what it looks like. Now we're going to go back and rerun the date of death spreadsheet, and I've just opened up the decedent information here, and I was just checking the date of death, which is, we've put down this hypothetical as December 26, 2024. And we're going to just, so now we're 1 year after that is when the Oregon estate tax return is due. So let's kind of keep working through the form here, make a few corrections. Right down here, so this would be 12/26/2025. This time we're not going to include notes. It's going to be a clean copy. And I have added another hypothetical asset. This is the number 20 asset down here, the real property. This is property at Gerhardt. It's a home at Gerhardt. And the idea is that Jane had inherited that from her mother. And the trustee of her mother's trust had prepared a deed deeding it to her in her own name. And Jane never realized that it had to be deeded into her trust. So at her death, she owned in her own name with no survivorship. Her husband wasn't on as a survivor or anything, just in her own name, this $1.5 million house at Gerhardt. So that's a probate asset. So now let's go ahead and again, let's do the document, the date of death spreadsheet, a clean version. So here it is. We're going to overwrite the old one and going to open it up from the. So now we have a probate asset, and it shows her the value for her at death is 1.5 million total for probate. Now the interesting thing is that this information here later in another template when we're doing Exhibit A to the inventory in the probate, it just grabs this information and makes this into the Exhibit A. You don't have to redo it when you're doing the probate. Now the assets passing by beneficiary designation, they're really not part of the probate, nor are they part of the trust administration, but they are necessary for the date of death values because for the Oregon estate tax return. And somebody has to do that, and it's probably going to be John because he's the trustee. He's going to be, getting a CPA to prepare the Oregon 706, and you have to have, of course, backup for each one of these values too. Now, see, it's a lot cleaner because there's no notes here. So it goes and totals the assets passing by beneficiary or survivorship. If they own something, like for instance, maybe they didn't put something in the trust that John and Jane owned together, like maybe another piece of real estate in their own names, they'd never transferred it. Well, that would be an asset that would be either by beneficiary designation or by survivorship. That'd be a survivorship. So it would go in this category too. Because it would be actually, see, there wouldn't be a probate in that case because he would just automatically own 100%, but she's still responsible for 50% of it on her Oregon estate tax return. So it would go in here as her values that she'd have. It passed by beneficiary designation to husband or survivorship. And then there's trust assets, and these are just all the trust assets by category, by real estate, timeshare, personal property, bank accounts, savings bonds, stock sale, certificate form, just her value, her half of it, everything that's in the trust. And then it does a grand total down here. So she's got, $6 million worth of assets. This is the hypothetical. And the reason why because they're in the estate planning videos, we wanted to show you all these different types of assets that somebody could own to illustrate how they work in the estate planning. That's why this would be kind of a typical type of a, asset mix for somebody. But anyway, this is the date of death spreadsheet. We're assuming we've got all the documents now that we need to send to the CPA, and that basically is how you deal with that part of the estate planning, or of the trust administration and probate, administration, because it's part of it. It's the estate tax end. And that's really about all I have to say about the date of death spreadsheet.